The first sound was not my wife's voice, not the heart monitor on my patient's screen. It was the unmistakable crackle of a taser. I froze. I was standing on my own front porch, phone pressed to my ear, mid-call with 911 dispatch, reporting a neighbor's sudden collapse during a backyard cookout. What should have been a night of routine emergency response turned into something twisted. A man in a black jacket with HOA security stitched across the chest shoved his way onto my property. He wasn't law enforcement, he wasn't EMS, but he moved like he owned the block. "You're not authorized to call emergency services without HOA approval," he barked. His hand twitched toward the taser at his hip. I blinked at him, incredulous. "Step aside. This is a medical emergency." The dispatcher's voice crackled in my ear. "Sir, stay on the line. Help is on the way." But the man didn't care. His taser snapped, blue lightning spitting from the prongs, and before I could shield myself, the current slammed into my chest. My world went white. When I came to, I was on the ground, breath ragged, neighbors gathering in whispers behind hedges and fences. The so-called security officer stood over me, smug. "HOA rules first. Calls go through us. Remember that." The cruelty in his voice hit harder than the electricity. That was the moment the suburban mask peeled back, and I saw what kind of operation this HOA really was. Not just fines for grass height or mailbox paint, not just passive-aggressive notes. This was something darker, something that smelled like control, intimidation, and unchecked power. My wife, Emily, rushed to my side, fury burning in her eyes. She was a lawyer, and she wasn't about to let this stand. Neighbors muttered from the shadows. "They went too far this time. He's a doctor, for God's sake. Somebody's going to get killed." I pushed myself upright, chest still stinging from the jolt. My mind wasn't on pain, it was on evidence, witnesses, documentation, federal law. Because if this man thought he could taser me during a 911 call and walk away, he was about to learn what happens when you cross the wrong neighbor. That night, as the flashing red and blue of real police finally lit up the cul-de-sac, a new fight began. And just as I thought the situation had peaked, another black SUV rolled to a stop in front of my house, headlights cutting into my driveway. The SUV idled at the curb like a predator sizing up its prey. The HOA security officer stiffened, then walked over to it with the confidence of a man reporting to his boss. Two men stepped out. They weren't in uniform, but they carried clipboards, radios, and the same smugness carved into their faces. The kind of smugness you only see when someone thinks the rules don't apply to them. "Dr. Hayes," one of them announced, addressing me like I was already on trial, "you violated HOA policy tonight. Unauthorized emergency response. Disorderly conduct on community property. There will be fines." Emily crossed her arms, her voice calm but razor sharp. He was calling 911 for a medical emergency. That is not only lawful, it's protected under federal statute. You interfered, you assaulted him, you obstructed emergency services. The taller one smirked. "Don't try your courtroom games here, lady. In this neighborhood, the HOA's word is law." Neighbors gasped from the shadows. Some pulled out phones, recording. Others turned away, too scared to be seen watching. This wasn't the petty HOA drama people joked about. This was intimidation in its purest form. The irony? Just down the block, an ambulance finally pulled in, paramedics rushing past the scene I was locked in. My patient, the neighbor who had collapsed, was now being treated in the back of the rig. But instead of I felt a cold anger simmering. The HOA had risked a life tonight. The security officer leaned in close enough for me to smell the cheap cologne mixing with burnt ozone from the taser. "Doc, if you think being a doctor gives you special rights, you're wrong. We own this street. We decide who calls for help and when." I didn't flinch, I just locked eyes with him and said, "Then you've just confessed to obstruction of emergency services. In front of witnesses. That's a felony." He blinked, just for a second. That was all I needed. I knew then this wasn't about grass, fences, or parking spaces. It was about power. The HOA had built its own shadow system of control, complete with fake uniforms, muscle, and scare tactics. And if they were bold enough to taser a doctor during a 911 call, what else had they done to my neighbors that never made the light of day? That night, rumors began to spread like wildfire. Texts, whispers, anonymous notes slipped under doors. Stories of threats, property damage, and unofficial fees collected at night. And then came the knock. Not at my door this time, but at my son's bedroom window. What would you do if your HOA tried this? Comment below. The knock at my son's window was soft, almost polite, but in the dead of night, it might as well have been a gunshot. I move fast, barefoot, silent, years of military discipline guiding each step. My son, Daniel, had frozen by the window, eyes wide. A beam of light cut through the blinds. I pulled him back gently, pressing a finger to my lips. Then I eased the blinds open just enough to see. 2 men in black jackets stood on my lawn. Not police, not neighbors. Their jackets bore the same stitched HOA security logo, but their movements betrayed them. Sloppy, untrained, like men playing dress-up with authority. One held a flashlight, scanning the yard. The other clutched a clipboard like it was a weapon. The clipboard man muttered, "Kid's light was on past curfew. That's a violation." A violation? My son's bedtime routine was now grounds for a midnight visit? I slipped Daniel into Emily's arms and motioned for her to take him upstairs. Then I retrieved the small safe under my bed, the one I'd promised myself I wouldn't need in suburbia. Inside, documents, a camera, and yes, my sidearm. Licensed, registered, never drawn unless absolutely necessary. By the time I stepped onto the porch, the 2 officers were trying my gate. "Can I help you?" My voice was calm, but it carried the weight of command. They flinched, caught off guard. "This is an official inspection," clipboard man said, puffing his chest. "You've been cited for repeated violations. Lights on past community quiet hours, disorderly conduct, unauthorized emergency contact." I raised the camera and snapped a picture, flash exploding across their startled faces. "You're trespassing, you're impersonating law enforcement, and you're harassing my family at midnight. This is evidence." The taser guy from earlier emerged from the shadows by the SUV. His hand rested on the weapon again, and this time his smirk was gone. "Doc, you really don't want to test us." I held steady, camera in one hand, phone in the other. "Funny? That's exactly what the federal prosecutor will say to you when this is over." The air thickened with tension. My neighbor's blinds twitched, silhouettes shifting. Eyes were everywhere, but help? Nowhere. The men didn't leave. They spread out, circling, trying to box me in. My porch light flickered, cutting off suddenly, leaving us in darkness. Someone had killed the power. And in that blackout moment, I realized this wasn't intimidation anymore. This was the opening move of something far more dangerous. The world went black except for the faint glow of flashlights slicing through the yard. The cul-de-sac was silent, every house sealed tight, neighbors peering through curtains but refusing to step outside. The 3 men advanced in formation now, tasers drawn, flashlights blinding me. They thought darkness would rattle me. They didn't know darkness was where I'd trained to operate. "Step down, Doc," the taser thug growled. "HOA orders. You're done here." I took a single step forward, voice steady. "Drop your weapons, now." They laughed, but the laugh didn't last. I had angled myself into the spill of their own lights, my phone recording every second, every word. My camera dangled on a strap at my chest, flashing red. Evidence, live and undeniable. Emily's voice rang from behind me, strong and sharp. 3 men, armed, impersonating officers, trespassing. This is being streamed. Walk away, now. Her bluff worked, briefly. Clipboard man faltered, muttering, "He's recording this." But the taser thug barked, "Shut up. He won't do anything." He lunged. In that instant, everything slowed. I pivoted, knocked his wrist with the precision of a surgeon, and the taser clattered to the ground. My foot pinned it as I snapped another photo. His partner swung a flashlight like a baton. I caught it, twisted, and shoved him back into the hedge. The 3rd man froze, caught between fight and flight. I leveled my voice at him like a rifle. "Pick your side right now. Walk away or go down with them." He dropped the clipboard, took 2 steps back, then bolted into the shadows. The taser thug wasn't finished. He scrambled for the weapon under my boot, eyes wild. That's when I pressed down harder, my tone cold as steel. They thought they could break me, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Neighbors gasped audibly from their windows. Someone whispered, He's got them. Another phone light clicked on. Suddenly, the shadows weren't so safe for the HOA anymore. Every lens, every witness turned toward them. The thug spat curses, but his bravado drained when real sirens screamed in the distance. Flashing blue and red cut through the cul-de-sac like judgment itself. Emily gripped my shoulder. "It's over," she said quietly. I didn't look away from the man on the ground. Not yet. Because I knew when the cruisers stopped, when the real law stepped out, these imposters were about to face the kind of reckoning they'd never imagined. The cruisers roared into the cul-de-sac, sirens cutting off but lights still blazing, flooding every lawn with red and blue. Real officers stepped out, hands resting on holsters, scanning the scene. For once, I didn't have to explain much. Half the neighborhood was already filming, shouting, pointing. "There!" one woman called from her porch. "That man tasered him earlier. They've been harassing us for months." The taser thug tried to bolt, but two deputies intercepted him with professional efficiency, slamming him against the hood of their cruiser. His cries for HOA rights fell flat. Clipboard man dropped to his knees, hands up, babbling about just following orders. The third? He'd vanished into the night, but with footage this clear, he wouldn't stay free long. I stepped forward, wincing at the ache still humming in my chest. "Officers," I said evenly, "you should know. They impersonated security, obstructed a 911 call, and assaulted me during an emergency response. I'm a physician. I was treating a neighbor when this began." Emily added, her voice like sharpened glass. "And I'm a licensed attorney. We have video evidence, audio, and eyewitness testimony from half the block. That's federal obstruction, felony assault, and impersonation of law enforcement." The ranking officer gave a grim nod. "Then it looks like your HOA just got dismantled." It didn't stop there. Over the next week, federal investigators swept in. Turns out, this wasn't just my family they'd targeted. Hidden fees, unauthorized searches of property, threats to elderly neighbors, an entire system of fear disguised as community management. The taser thug and his cohorts weren't licensed anything. They were hired muscle with criminal records, brought in by the HOA president to enforce compliance. The president herself was indicted for conspiracy and fraud. The words racketeering and civil rights violations were suddenly on every local news channel. Our lawsuit wasn't about money, it was about exposure. But when the judge banged the gavel, awarding damages and punitive fines totaling $5 million, the message was loud and clear. No HOA, no self-styled neighborhood dictator was above the law. The neighborhood changed after that. The sign at the front gate that once read Maple Crest HOA, Community First, was taken down by county order. For the first time in years, people opened their blinds without fear. Kids rode bikes at dusk without being sighted. And when my son turned his light on past 10, no one came knocking. Months later, I walked the cul-de-sac at sunset. Emily's hand in mine, Daniel pedaling his bike ahead. The silence was different now, not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace. As the sun set over the cul-de-sac, the only sound left was silence. The kind of silence you earn after a battle won.